All right, we're live. This is going to be a little bit different. So obviously it's a little bit professional of a setup, and I am clearly holding the microphone, but this is going to be essentially the podcast version of just my thoughts, a little bit longer. And this is something you'll probably just hear instead of watch me because it's not as exciting. I'm going to get a nice little boom right here. But essentially, if this is the first time you're watching this because the keywords Ironman and triathlon came up, or the keywords lessons learned, this isn't really going to be about the actual event itself. This isn't really going to be talking about, you should always make sure that you eat clean, or make sure that you don't have anything with high fiber right before the race, or you don't want to overhydrate before you get into the swim. Okay, those are all good things. I'm not talking about the specifics. I'm actually talking about the mental aspect, which has been a bigger portion of why I'm assuming most triathletes continue doing this, is that they feel they need to continue doing it. And whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, there's a toll, good and bad. So if you stay in comfort, essentially the bad thing is that you never really push yourself, okay? The good thing is that you're comfortable and you're going to survive, and it feels safe and it feels cozy and warm, okay? But then there's probably going to be a point in your life where you just feel, I could be doing more, I should be doing more, I can be doing more, let's do more. I don't know when that's going to come up. If you really think back to two people that come to mind right away, it's Ray Kroc, who started McDonald's. Nothing against McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken, but Ray Kroc started McDonald's in his 50s. KFC with Colonel Sanders was started when he was actually writing a note, and they obviously portrayed this under a tree and whatever. But he was writing a note and saying, what's my legacy? What am I going to be known for? So he started it at 65 when he was retired. 65. That's crazy. So if you think about it, when do you want to feel that you haven't done enough, or that you want to push yourself? When you're young and healthy, when you have the ability to do it, or when you're sitting under a tree and you're essentially saying, here's my obituary. This is what I'm going to be known for. Here's my legacy. I know I'm going to want to be in the former. And the reason, we'll get into that in a second. Actually, we'll get into it right now. The reason, some people, just want to make sure that I'm in focus. There we go. The reason that, what's going on, Chris? So the reason that I actually ensure that I'm doing this now is because for 23 years of my life, I was actually not doing the things correctly. Okay, I was not living up to my potential. You guys already know my story behind that. But I feel like it's the opposite for a lot of these people. Okay, so for the first 23 years of someone's life, for a lot of people, is that they did do it correctly. They did study hard. They did live up to their potential. They did get straight A's. They were told they were very smart. They went to a very good school and they succeeded and they graduated on time and they got great grades and they went into the workforce and they got a great job. They did everything right for 24, 25 years of their life. That's a long time. And you did it right. And I feel that when you actually start going decades into the future, so if you go 25, 35, and 45, and then 55, and then if you're talking about KFC, Colonel Sanders, 65, but each 10 years or on the zero, so 30, 40, 50, 60, you really look back and you start saying, am I doing what I want to do? Maybe. That's one of the questions. But am I happy with what I'm doing? Whether that's in the relationship, whether that's in my job and everything else. And I'll get into the lessons in a second. And the reason I have this long diatribe of a preamble is because if you don't actually have those reflections sooner, and almost every single day, like I do, I leave work every single day. And I say, did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish today? Am I being busy or am I being productive? That's one of the best questions you should ask yourself every single day. Am I being busy or am I actually being productive? So and it will hit you hard, like the last 2 days, just being busy, not being productive, not pushing the boulder forward at all. The boulder was stopped. In other words, the boulder of my goals. And if you really think about it, the compound effect is best utilized when you take something small like coffee. So if you take coffee and then you say, okay, so a coffee is, say, $3.50, and you buy it 5 days a week, $3.50, that's not much. Buy it every single week times 56 weeks or whatever, 52 weeks. That's 970, 950, whatever amount of coffee you are. That's 1 year. Let's multiply it by 10 years. That's almost $10,000. Okay? So that is the power of the compounding effect, where everyone has said it. Peter Diamandis, Tony Robbins, everyone has talked about it, where they said, hey, listen, I don't know what you are doing on a daily basis, but you overestimate what you could do in a decade, and you overestimate what you could do in a year, and you underestimate what you could do in a decade. Because that's not us. We are not creatures to understand the long term. That's not how we survived. We didn't survive on the plains of Africa, be like, should I run away from this tiger? I'm really hungry. Should I save this food for later? We can't see that because that's evolution. That's Mother Nature. Okay, there's a great post out there. I highly recommend. The website is Wait But Why. Or no, let me look it up. It's a fantastic iteration of society. I actually wrote it. Oh, no, I already printed it out. Oh, no, I have it right here. The .com is called, it's called Wait But Why. And I can't put it up on the camera, but essentially it goes over society. And it's going over something called emergence. So emergence is that the sum of all the parts of something equal a whole, but that whole is also part of a larger being, and then a larger being, and a larger being. And you have two brains. You have the primitive brain, which is there for millions of years, billions of years. And then you have the higher brain, which is reason and logic and creativity. And they don't match. They don't match. Because you have the primitive brain, which is survival, that has been there way longer than this newer brain, the prefrontal cortex. And they don't go together. Okay? So that's why you have the self or the ego. The ego is the yin and the yang. There's always one good, one bad. But if you actually understand that you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of your thoughts, then it works out. So let me just go over a couple of my beautiful things. I did that with sports about 1,000. Imagine, you should do that with time, by the way. You should look at it on a time perspective, because you could really make more money, but you can't make more time. So if you really consider 15 seconds or a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, I'm on Instagram 10 minutes a day. I'm just giving out an arbitrary example. 10 minutes a day, which is not the case. I think the average is an hour and a half or something on social media, something ridiculous. And that's including all of them: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, YouTube's probably longer because people are obsessed with YouTube, but thank you, because they're obviously watching right now. So the first one is the process, okay? So there's a great guy out there. His name is Matt Dixon. So he's one of the best. He's a prolific triathlon coach. So essentially, Matt Dixon has something called the Purple Patch Podcast. I think that's the name of the company. It's a Purple Patch Podcast, and it's a mouthful, but he has a great book out there, and he just came out with a podcast. I was listening today as I was getting ready, and he said that his athlete felt burned out and fatigued. And Grant Cardone actually brought this up a couple of years ago, and I heard it, and it made sense then, and Matt Dixon kind of put it into a different iteration. So Grant Cardone talked about that if you have no fire, if you lose your passion, it's not because of anything. He says it's an arbitrary thing. It's a made up concept, and I agree, because there has to be things along with the process. So the process is making sales calls. The process is blogging. The process is making videos, okay? The outcome is I have a better body if I go to the gym. The outcome is I have more subscribers and I make money. The outcome is I have more business if I make more phone calls. But the process is the boring part. And as what's his name in Turning Pro talks about, he says, listen, to turn pro, you have to love that part. And that's essentially the part that people do not like. Okay, that's the turning pro, as what's his name says. I know Chris will probably write it down. He'll probably Google it. Oh, I already knew it. But if you think about it, that process is where people, as Grant Cardone talks about, loses their passion or get burnt out or fatigued. And Matt Dixon also said that today. And Matt Dixon brought it up as a different reiteration, which is essentially you have intermittent rest intervals, which sounds obvious, but the rest intervals are actually mandatory in our lives. So what we usually do is we wake up, we get on our phone, we commute to work, we go to work, then we get home, eat dinner, then get back on the phone, and then we go to bed. But our brain has never had a reset. Our brain has never had that intermittent area of time by itself to actually bring down that stimulation. When you're around and you're at work, it's even worse now because we're on a computer. Okay, most people think work is like a tribe back in the day, but tribes didn't have blue light stimulation all over the place in videos and moving pictures and even images that we see all over the internet. We didn't have that. And the feelings that we have, the amount of chemical reactions that are going through our body is more extreme than ever. And this is going to be an issue because people say, and again, Gary Vaynerchuk posted it. I refollowed him, but I'm about to unfollow him again because the guy is pushing so much social media. Social media is not the answer. Social media is part of the problem. It's a tool, but it's part of the problem. It's the same thing with alcohol. Alcohol can relieve the edge, but it also can go really far. And to be honest, it's a poison. I probably drink once every 2 months now. I appreciate Chris sending over the Game Changers. Watch that. I eat meat, not for moral reasons or anything else, but because it tastes good. And I have that maybe once a quarter. So I have it about 4 times a year. Is that going to affect my health? No, because it's only 4 times a year. You do something 4 times a year and it's once during the day, it's not going to affect your health in the long run. You have meat every single day or once a week, or you have big portions of it or really bad portions of it, and you're not exercising, you're not, if I have 2 cigarettes 4 times a year, it's really not going to, it's not going to affect my health. But that's the thing, is that I don't want to do it. It's the same thing with meat is, it is what it is. Maybe I'll go vegetarian at one time, but I don't rely on it for anything but the pleasure of it. Okay, so it's like ice cream. Okay, so I don't have any kind of sugar at all because I break out acne-wise. My mind goes inside and out, and then my teeth as well. It's not good. But I also have that maybe again once a quarter. Like a cake or a cookie or something like that. But it's part of the process of what Matt Dixon said, is that if you don't love the process, and it's really hard to transform your brain to love the process because your brain says it's early, I don't want to go to the gym, stay in bed, it's comfortable, it's safe. Okay, that's the primitive brain that I was talking about before, is that the outcome. So this is the best way to think about it, is that when I was actually especially training really hard, 6 days a week for months. 7 days a week for months. I really didn't have any days off because I was starting at such a deficit and I was going into such an intense race as Ironman Louisville. And unfortunately, they canceled the swim, which I'm pissed about, but it is what it is. Ironman is doing that nowadays because it's a big corporation. Understandable. Maybe it was because of the algae and whatever. Not going to get into that. But what I say now is, well, I guess I'm going to suck at it. Might as well do it. So in other words, a long bike ride. Well, I guess I'm going to suck at it, but might as well do it. Well, I guess I'm going to suck at these sales calls. Might as well do it. So in other words, I'm putting no emphasis on the outcome. And I highly recommend that you guys do this. Okay. So the first one is obviously focus on the process and not the outcome. Number 2 is the accountability. Okay. I'm awful with anything unless there's accountability. 100%. I already know that. Okay. So let's just take a step back. Is if you are not honest with yourself, as David Goggins talks about, if you are not honest with yourself, there's no room for change. There's no need to actually change. Why would you change? I'm fine. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't need to cut back on my spending. My relationship is perfect. My child loves me. My work is going great. Don't worry about my debt or my credit cards or that I'm not saving any energy for when I'm older. It's okay that I'm clogging my arteries. In other words, there is no honesty. We are too soft on each other, okay? Or the opposite is true, is that we're too hard on each other. Hard on ourselves. Okay, we're too soft on each other. So in other words, we don't tell the truth. Hey, listen, you're gonna die. Okay, this acceptance of body something, whatever they call it, is no. If you continue doing this, you will have a premature death. Is that really gonna be your legacy? If you continue doing this, your family is gonna have to pay for your medical costs because, sir, you have no money when you retire. You're spending all of it. You have no savings. Okay. So actually focusing and being self-aware that, you know what, Charles, you're being a big pansy right now. You're not making enough sales calls. You're saying you want this life, but you're not making enough sales calls. Okay. For me, that works. Okay. For other people, it's be positive towards them. You can do it. I don't like that. That doesn't work for me. So you have to find your way to hold yourself accountable. But you have to get a coach. You have to get a friend, okay? A coach costs money. A friend is free. You just hold each other accountable. You have each other doing Facebook Lives. Maybe you post it to social media. This is what I'm going to do every single day. And then at the bottom of the post say, hey, listen, call me out after month 4 if you don't see any difference in my physique. Please do it. Please call me out. One of my friends posted that he is giving up alcohol and not to tempt him. That's amazing. Of course, his buddies were a bunch of piles of, funny guys. And they posted in the comments, hey, dude, we have a big party in Vegas this weekend. When you come? This is a guy that parties too much. But he has a kid now. So he's taking his health seriously. Okay? So he posted and he just tells publicly, this is what I'm doing. Hold myself to it and don't tempt me. Okay? And if he has good friends, those friends will say, you know what? It's better for you. If he has bad friends, guess what those friends talk about? Those friends talk about, you know what? I wish I was like that. I wish I had the willpower to actually hold myself accountable and do something like that. Those are the bad friends. Those are the friends he should get rid of. Okay? And someone else posted about, she does triathlons and that she lost and gained friends. That's going to happen. That's fine. Accountability. You have to get accountability or else you won't start. Number 3, you can learn any skill. You can learn any skill. Okay? When people hear that, they think, I'm going to become a professional. I'm not talking about that. You can learn how to market, how to sell, how to be better, how to eat correctly, how to exercise, how to walk, how to run, how to swim, how to bike faster, how to bike really fast. Okay? How to go into the aero bars. Okay? So these are things that I actually learned along the way. And if you have a closed mindset, as Carol Dweck talks about, obviously it's not a closed mindset, it's a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, or as the other scientists say, you either are internally, locus of control is internal or external. In other words, you feel like something on the outside affects you. So the perception of other people, the way you grew up, or because of cultural reasons, because of societal reasons, whatever the reason is, you feel that that is your hindrance to not learn something. Okay? So the first thing that I implore you to do is say, what do I think about all the time? That's where silence needs to come in. Okay? Silence needs to come into the ability to think about what you have to give up and what you need to do to go where you want. Okay? I had to give up a robust social life to get to triathlon training. But this is the thing, is that as you get better, which is the next one, as you get better in one area, you're going to get better in other areas. It bleeds everywhere. Your confidence, your boldness, you'll then start seeing people that were above you in, say, business or in intelligence or in wealth. If you start focusing on one area of like that, you'll start saying, wow, I'm making gains. I'm compounding, as Darren Hardy talks about, or the slight edge, as Mike Olson or Jeff Olson, one of the Olson twins, as he talks about. And that was the coffee that I was talking about, or the time I was talking about. If you really spell it out, you do, say, 1 hour times a week. Say you do that every single week. So that's 1 hour times every single week times the month times the year. That's 300. That's obviously, 365 divided by, say, whatever, I don't know, 365 hours, would that be days? That's 15 days. That's crazy, actually. 15 days you spend on social media. 15 days you spend on social media if you're on it 1 hour a day. Okay? If that doesn't get your mind thinking, I don't know what will. So I highly recommend, if you are looking to do 2020 goals, you post it to social media. You look at the actual process, not the outcome. So if the outcome is, I want to make $50,000 extra dollars, $10,000 extra dollars. For me, it's, I want to buy a new bike. Okay. So the bike is, I don't know, it's probably going to be about $8,000 to $9,000. Okay. I would have bought it last year, but this year I'm thinking, actually, that $8,000 to $9,000 put into the stock market at a low time, which is right now. And if I actually put that towards assistance, which is people leveraging my time, I can make a lot more money. Last year, I would have went and I would have bought it because I was in a, let's do it right now. That's the difference. I have a buddy that he's all about right now. He doesn't look about the consequences in the future at all. He's like, I'm just going to smoke pot or drink or party or travel. Dude, you're in the same apartment that you've been in for the last 8 or 9 years. Your health hasn't increased. It's actually decreased. And you're only 34. That's not good. There is no self-awareness to consequences if you compound that even a decade or 2 decades. There is no in the future. That's hedonism. Hedonism is in the moment right now, okay? There's a balance where you have to do some enjoyability, but you also have to say, well, listen, if I keep on partying, which is spending money, putting my health down, waking up hungover, which affects work, and then I'm not bringing that towards my relationship, his girlfriend, maybe that doesn't lead to marriage, which he wants, or leads to kids, with what he wants, okay? Man, I don't know. I don't know. I just walk around thinking that most, and yes, maybe it is the ego, what I'm about to say. But I always think, why are people not thinking deeper into their actions? And I'm the same way. And the reason I'm thinking about that, because I'm thinking about it for myself. So anything you think about is something that you should be thinking about for yourself. So you have the 2020 processes. So for me, it's to make 50 dials every single day. And out of 50 dials, I'm going to get 1 appointment. In a good market, probably 2 or 3 appointments. But right now, it's not a good market. So I have to consider, okay, 1 appointment. I compound 1 appointment over a week. So that's 5 appointments. Over a month, that's 20 appointments. I'll probably get 1 listing extra a month. Guess what that does? Pays for my bike. So I'm not taking the money that I already have because I can afford a new bike. But I'm actually putting out the scenario, I need a new bike, a triathlon bike, because right now I have a road bike. Triathlon bike, which is, my performance will go through the roof because I have a very abused 4-year-old. It was good when I bought it, but I have put so many miles onto this bike that it's starting to fall apart. I've put on thousands and thousands and thousands of miles. This was not like I'm going to use this. This was like my last race, 112 miles. The week before that, 70 miles. The week before that, 80 miles. The week before that, it's each week this thing is getting abused. It's on the kicker, then it's on the road, then it's back. So I look at it. And then let's just go over my goals really quick. because on something like this is obviously probably better. What's going on? Do you think David Goggins should try an academic challenge instead of a physical one? Yeah, I don't know. I look at, so he's all about challenging himself physically because that is the hardest thing to do. Challenging yourself mentally is really just studying. But there's really no time in that where you just say, maybe there is. And I'll take it back because I've never really studied intensely for something that's crazy like physics or doctorate. But there are probably times where you really learn about yourself. But physically, your body has a stopping point, a governor, as David talks about, and he calls it the 40% rule. I don't even think we even touch 40%. Okay? There's a great book out there, and it talks about people that have actually died from exhaustion, where they had the governor, but they actually turned off the governor and they actually died, which is crazy to think about. That their mind was so powerful that they actually won. They actually took so much control of their mind that they actually won, which is crazy. They won over the mind. They died, which obviously I don't recommend. But let's just go over a couple of my goals. So number one is speaking. That's number one. So actually, let's go over finances. So finances, it's kind of one of those things that you just don't want to touch. You don't feel like you want to because some people are afraid. I sent over that I'm going to have probably right around $22,000 to $25,000 of additional costs next year, and I sent that over to a friend, and she responds, and she goes, I don't even want to think about it, and that hit me because I now know I have to do more business. So what she does is she says, I just shell out the money and I don't think about it. That's kind of like the hedonism of, well, I guess I'm just going to smoke pot, or I'm going to overdrink or overeat or not go to the gym. And then whatever happens. It's like preparing for that extra $25,000 is necessary. My bike is in that $25,000, and it doesn't seem like a lot of money. And in 10, 15 years, I'm going to be looking back and like, oh, $25,000, not a big deal. But right now, to get to that point, I have to do the 1% better. The 1% better is I have $25,000 extra dollars in expenses that I'm going to be doing, whether that's traveling for seminars, whether that's traveling for Ironman, and whether that is bringing on things within my business. So I want to do a lot more video. I've been saying that for years, but I've noticed that I'm good on video. I'm just not good doing video. Okay, so that's accountability. Okay, a lot of people say, well, I just don't want to do video in whole. What do you mean? You don't know how to edit, you don't know how to shoot, you don't know how to turn on the camera, you don't know how to have a stupid microphone right near your mouth. What about it? Okay, that's a big generalization. I don't do video, or I don't do sales calls. What about it? You don't like reaching out to people, you're afraid of rejection, you don't have the time, whatever the case is, break it down. So the first one is obviously money. So I broke it down and I said I want to be having a 25% profit. 60% is going to be going to agents. So agents take, if $100 come in, $60 goes to the agent, $25 of profit, and then $15 in expenses. That's going to be really hard to, as you can see, as I itch my leg for no reason, it's going to be really hard to do. Okay, that's my goal, is to do 15% in expenses. And guess what? Right now, I'm not even tracking my expenses. I'm tracking my expenses, but I don't know the ratio. So that's my goal in December. Okay, that's probably going to come to fruition. I'm pretty confident about that. So number one is under the expenses is tracking expenses and profit and agent and how much agents get. So that's number one, which is obviously a lagging indicator. Okay, a leading indicator is making 50 dials. I get one appointment, 5 appointments a week, 20 appointments a month, one listing from those 20 appointments. So that's one extra listing every single month. Right now, it's not a good market, so maybe 50% will sell, unfortunately, and as long as it's at the right price. And then from there, that's part of the $22,000, $25,000. But then out of the $22,000, $25,000, you have to add on taxes, so I have to make about $40,000. Okay. which is definitely doable if I hold myself accountable with the guy Eric who makes calls with me. So that's money, number one. Number two is physically. This all comes down to when I'm on, and when I'm off, I'm off. There is no gray area at all. So physically, it's that I do the majority of my workouts, probably 98, 99% of the workouts that my coach gives me. Okay, there's a whole platform that we go in, and she says, today you do this, next day you do this, the next day you do this, and then I comment on it. So that's pretty easy for me physically because I have an accountability coach, my coach. When I'm making calls, my accountability is Eric's. That's 1, 2. Relationships, I would say that's really hard to understand. That's the truth, is because I've said I've wanted it, but I haven't actually really taken any action to it. So it's, Charles, your actions speak so loud that I can't even hear anything you say. Okay, so the actions of actually approaching a pretty girl, which I do every now and then, but it's kind of an afterthought instead of my sole focus. I'm off and on that because my sole focus really is my business and obviously my health right now, and especially in a downturn that we're in right now. Those are the two things that I'm really focusing on, because on an upturn, it's easy. Everyone's making money. But right now, all the people that are not actually going out and being proactive and going out and getting business, they're screwed. Also next year, September of next year, I wrote it down. I want to start talking at colleges. The reason I bring up colleges, it's easy. NYU's right here. I have Baruch. I have Hunter College. There's a couple of colleges here in New York. Probably not Columbia, but I'll try. Because there's a thing that comes around talking, okay? You kind of formulate, as Jordan Peters says, you formulate your ideas a lot more, and people challenge you on those ideas, okay? So when you have your ideas by yourself, you're kind of in your own echo chamber. And then as you spill your ideas out, people give you feedback on those ideas, and most people don't like the feedback that they hear, number one. Number two is when they actually send out those ideas, they actually start formulating their rebuttal and also their argument better. Okay, so when I say you should go and exercise, people already know that. Or I should say you should have silence. People already know that. But formulating the argument that people should be doing it is more important, because you obviously want action on the other side of this. So action would be, when I'm sitting in silence, that is the most powerful thing that I've ever done at any time. That's when I get uncomfortable, that I'm being very comfortable in my life. I'm not making the amount of calls that I need to make. I'm not making the amount of money that I want to make. I have for a while expected to be a lot further along in life at 34 than I am right now. So, everyone says by 30, I want to be a millionaire. And then they're 33 and 34. And it gets harder and harder unless you actually start changing, because you get deeper and deeper into other obligations, family, relationship, your job. As you start moving up in your job, you're like, oh, that's great. I'm making a little bit more money. But your time to maybe start that side hustle, it's a little bit harder. Let's go over some other ones. I pretty much have it all. I also want to start doing mailers. Obviously, that's all business related. I want to have an assistant full-time in here. The last one didn't work out because she was way overqualified. She started doing things and she's like, yeah, this is, and then she got a full-time job. So obviously take the full-time job, not the part-time job. And then videos. I definitely want to get videos really involved financially. I also bring up low-cost index fund. I am back at it with that for a hiatus of almost a year. And what I've noticed, because I started doing the math and I said, okay, and I heard this from someone else. It was Keith Cunningham. Highly recommend you go check him out. Keith Cunningham is just an amazing human being. He's just a really good orator. He knows how to break down just complex issues like finances into something that's bite-sized and it's easy to digest. So I have every single 2 weeks, so bi-weekly, money going out, $500, I think it is, $500, whatever it is for you. Could be more, could be less. But money going out, one into my IRA, which is obviously investment for my retirement. And then I have investment going into my regular investment fund. So I chose that at Vanguard low cost index fund. I think that the fee is like 0.3%. Okay. And the reason I did that is because I had a financial advisor investing in mutual funds. And the thing is, 1% was taken off the top. Okay. It didn't matter. 1% was taken off the top. That was going to him. Then 3% was actually going to the mutual fund. So that's 4%. So even if you made 8%, you're only getting 50% of that profit. And then you have to pay taxes on that. So you're really getting like a quarter. The math is probably totally wrong on that. It's probably even less. But if you make $100, you're only making 25, and 75 is going out the door. So highly recommend you guys really dial in your finances. There's a great program that I use called Xero, Xero.com. And you just hook up your bank account or your credit cards or whatever, and you just track your finances. And it kind of, that's the problem with what the girl was talking about before. She doesn't want to track her finances. So guess what? You're never going to become wealthy. Okay? Things are going to dry up in a bad time. People aren't going to go for the luxuries. People aren't going to go for their services. Like, why would they pay for a real estate agent? Well, maybe they need to sell or they need to buy. But if they're not even buying or selling, why do they need you? Mortgage people. Okay? Obviously, there's going to be less people that are actually purchasing. So that means less mortgages if you're at a bank. Okay? Things that you should be in is food, because people will always be eating, maybe not high-end restaurants and things like that, but you have to be concerned over the next year, because everyone's going to be making money the year after that. And if you're not prepared for the coming year, you're fucked. And the reason I use that word is because I went through 2009, and all the people that didn't make it, they essentially had to get jobs. People that were in real estate had to get jobs. And that is everyone's worst nightmare in real estate, is that they failed at real estate and they have to get a desk job. That's what it comes down to. You just don't want that. It's the worst. It literally is the worst thing, is getting a desk job after you've essentially, when you put all of your eggs in the basket, told everyone I'm in real estate and I failed out of real estate and now I have to get back to a desk job and sit down. And then from there, so you have two things that compound. There's something called the winner effect. And then there's also something that I want to bring up that Dr. Jordan Peterson just brought up, is that, people cliche bring up that your potential is unknowable. And Dr. Jordan Peterson just brought up something very interesting. Obviously, he's in ill health and mentally, and his wife as well. So it's really tough times that they're going through. But he brought up two. So if you listen to his podcast, two lectures in a row, he brought up that your individual genes get used to you doing something. Okay, so if you exercise a lot, your genes say, okay, we're used to this stress muscle. Say you've been doing it for a year. Your genes are either used to you doing that. I'm not talking about muscle fibers. I'm talking about your actual genes. Okay, so when someone actually gets in the process of doing something like sales calls or whatever, it happens, yes, in your mind, which is neurons that fire together, wire together. So that's obviously synaptic connections. They come together and they say, okay, I make sales calls when I'm at my desk. I make sales calls when I'm at the gym. I lift weights, things like that. And what Dr. Jordan Peterson said, as Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton has also said, highly recommend those books. Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit, and the Placebo Effect. It's just mind-altering, just nature. Okay, people take their life for granted. If they just start learning how amazing the body is, they'll really not take things for granted. They just look at things so simplistically. It's nuts to me. It's absolutely fascinating how our body adapts. You cut yourself, you have a paper cut, that thing heals automatically. Does that not just blow someone's mind apart? Like, I don't know. It's nuts. Or you have a scar, like tissue, like people take that for granted. Oh, it's just going to heal. Can you just talk about that healing process for a second? That is amazing. That is amazing that it didn't just say, well, what makes that happen? I know people can say, well, the healthy cells go in and the red blood cells and things like that. But what makes that do that? Why would they do that? Well, it's to heal yourself. No, let's go deeper into that thought. Why? What is making them do that? What is moving them to do that? What is the intelligence behind that? It's crazy to think about. I think that's why Elon Musk and Peter Diamandis has talked about that we're living in a simulation, because there's absolutely no way to explain what we're living in right now. Yes, obviously evolution, Big Bang, and everything else. What created those gases? Okay, that's one way to think about it. What created those gases that we are, the hydrogen, the nitrogen, the oxygen that exploded? What created also the space for all of that to happen? What created the laws of the universe? Were they already there? Were they created after the Big Bang? It just happened? It's just fascinating to think about. And then people say, and that's why Elon Musk, he said, yeah, when he was asked if he believes in God, he said, well, if you're talking about something that, orders the universe, then yes, I do. And he's not talking about, a guy up in the sky. I'm Catholic, but he's not talking about that. He's just looking at it and he says, how the fuck does this happen? That's why Einstein he was just looking around, just these brilliant minds. Someone that simplistically looks at the world. And I know this is going to be a rant, but someone that simplistically looks at the world and says, I don't know, something dumb like visualization or gratitude, or I don't know, just someone that doesn't go deeper is really the friends that I've kind of pushed out of my life. Perfect example is someone messaged me because I posted something that this one woman was asking, where are all the good men, or why don't they like strong, independent women and things like that. And I reposted it, is that women and men, they don't understand. If they did a little bit of research, just a little bit of research, you'd understand that men are different than women, okay? Biologically. And that's why we survived. Men by themselves would not have survived because we all would have been at war with each other all the time and we would have killed each other. If it was just women, then nothing would have gotten done, because you can't have a baby and hunt and protect that baby. You needed both. You needed the procreation and you also needed the hunting and gathering. Okay? Those are facts. Okay? If you look at that and then you just say, if our ancestors had the opportunities that we have right now, what would they do? What would they do? What would they do? We can get anything we want at any time in our pocket. We could be taking a crap and literally be ordering food, water, shelter, clothing. Basic human needs that people would have died for. Literally, they did. They died for that. And we're walking around and we're complaining, well, this person sent me a DM and they're pissed off, or I only have 1,000 followers. Look back on my images, okay? I think I only got single digits on my post from yesterday. I'm really not doing it for, obviously, the likes and the things. I'm doing it because it shows, okay, this guy is actually still out there. I probably reached 200 to 300 people, okay? But maybe 7 liked the photo or whatever the case is. I'm doing it showing that this is marketing. That is part of sales, okay? It's not, yes, it is part of the engagement. And do I want it higher? Yes. But that's a perfect example of going back to the first thing that I was talking about, which is it's the process of posting to social media. I don't like doing it. That's why if you go to bpibrands.com/social, and this isn't really a plug, but it's my ability, bpibrands.com/social. So if you go there, I can post on my computer. I don't even need the app. So I just schedule it in, okay? So I bought this tool so I could do that. I have a way to do shorter links and customize it. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to put in this huge link. Okay. So it's a tool. All right, man, I don't know. So going back to what Dr. Jordan Peterson said, and there's probably no one still watching. Oh, we got 3 people. What's going on? All right. So going back to what Dr. Jordan Peterson said, and it was just absolutely fascinating, because people say your potential is unknowable. People hate that. And I do too, because that doesn't mean anything. Of course. Thanks for the cliche. Thanks for posting it, whoever you are. Stupid. It's really dumb. to post something like that. Post what Dr. Jordan Peterson talked about, which is as your body and your mind get used to something. And by the way, this could be good or bad. This could be good or bad. This could be bad as in your body's now used to laziness. So your body, when it says, we have to go out into New York City where there's 8 million people and walk around, you tense up because you're not used to it. I'm used to it. It's not a big deal. When I hear a siren, when I hear a car horn, when I see a homeless guy, when I, all these things throughout my life, someone yelling, someone fighting, someone defecating, it's not a big deal because you're used to it. So your genes, which are just unbelievable pieces of nature, unbelievable. When your genes get used to something, so Dr. Jordan Peterson is talking about in the good way. So in other words, you wake up and you fucking slay the day. Dr. Jordan Peterson says your genes actually, when they multiply and they duplicate that into the next gene. So you're essentially, when you do something good, you're essentially procreating action or going to the gym into your body along with your mind. So when Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about the future is, or your potential is literally unknowable, it really is. Because you don't know how far you can go because you don't know how many genes are now multiplying and saying he makes 50 dials, why doesn't he make 100 dials? Or he public speaks in front of a college, why doesn't he public speak in front of more people? So when he says it's unknowable, it truly is unknowable because you haven't taken the steps to have your genes essentially duplicate in a action-oriented way. Okay? I think that's really powerful. I listened to that probably 4 or 5 times because that really puts the power of everything that I've been talking about into one sentence. Okay? That is focus on the process. It's not the outcome. It's about the genes duplicating and spreading in more and more. Your brain also coming together and firing closer together. Because as you start undoing going to the gym, this is how far away it goes, okay? It's learning a language. That's why, I'll give you an example, is that I used to approach girls all the time. Loved going out, loved talking to girls. I was having a great social life, everything. And my mind was into that. Then I said, let's just focus on work for a little bit. That's why I think we can really only do 2 things very well in life. And what would my 2 be? So if you have the 4, so obviously I'm not a father and husband, but that would probably be it in my 40s when I'm married with a kid. But right now it's definitely business and it's definitely health because it's really hard to add in the 3rd one, which is, and then you automate the money. That's why you want to automate the money. The money leaves, it gets individually invested. You don't even think about it, but you obviously track it on a daily basis as well. But those would be it. It's relationships, which I was just talking about, which father and married. That's in my 40s. Right now, it's really hard to do going out and approaching girls and everything else. So that was part of what happened when I started focusing on work. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about, relationships. And then it was really hard to get right back into it. And that's because it was a year since I really was hitting the streets hard, taking time and saying, you know what, I'm going to focus on Central Park and talking to girls for an hour or 2 hours every single day, collecting numbers, blah, blah, blah. I was really into it. And then I just stopped because I wanted to make more money. Then I stopped because I noticed that my health was going down. In other words, I was having less energy. I was having pimples and I was fatigued and I was hungover and it was just, I just looked chubbier and it just wasn't good. So I would say the 2 things right now, my focus is business, and it is definitely on top of that, it is money is automated, and it is also health. Business, I would say health number 1 because that leads into business. So that would be the hierarchy, is make sure that I do my workout because that leads into business, which leads into money. Okay, most people focus on money, but they're not even talking about business. How do you make money? You have to focus on the actual process of making calls or whatever it is for you. But But I highly recommend you look at your finances as soon as possible. As soon as possible. And you say, do I really need that subscription? Netflix, I did the free thing to go watch that documentary, and actually Bill Burr's latest special. But besides that, I don't, I have water delivered, Poland Spring. So that's a subscription. Even other things that I'm thinking about, it's like, how do I even draw back on this? Why am I spending an extra? I'm spending $160 on a holy shit Verizon unlimited everything package, and I'm thinking, well, why don't I look back and see how many gigs I actually do? And it does help because I'm streaming YouTube videos for lives for you guys. I'm also doing FaceTime. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, leave in the comments below. Your potential is literally unknowable. Yeah. And by the way, this is why you should never stop learning, is because when two things connect and they go and here's the reason. I'm reading this book, okay? I don't know if that's going to come up. It'll probably come up. But essentially, it's leadership and self-deception, okay? I'm not really one for fables, okay? Or fiction, fable, whatever. I just think they're really boring, and I really hate this book because it is that. Why couldn't you just tell me in a non-fiction way? But anyway, in there, they're talking about self-deception, which is essentially that you deceive yourself to see yourself as correct and that you are always potentially the victim in a bad circumstance. And they don't do it in that blatant of an obvious way, but if you're in a conference room and you write all these notes down, you go to the bathroom, you come back, and someone erased the notes, you look at yourself as a victim. You say, who erased my notes? So then what they talk about in the book is that you look at it from the other person's point of view, which is this person went in, they're cleaning, they didn't see anyone in there, the lights were off, and that's what they do is they erase the board. So they're both right. The one person is a cleaner, saw that no one was in there, thought this was in from some other time, and erased the board. The other person was also right because he was going to go back and add to the notes. That's self-deception. So they call it in and out of the box. Do I recommend it? Probably not, unless you like fables. But it's actually a best-selling book. That's why I picked it up. But in there, they talk about something that I also heard in real life by another podcast, is that a leader, Ben Kinney, which I'm actually going to go see in December out in some fucking Bumble area. I have to fly into Seattle and then drive 2.5 hours up because the other option was to fly into Vancouver and then cross the border, which the flights were like $300 or $400 more and at crazy different times, and there was no direct flight from New York to Vancouver. So I guess clearly that's not a popular town, even though I heard it was beautiful. Anyway, Ben Kinney, the guy that I'm going to go see, it's a 3-day, really in the middle of nowhere, which is great because it's called career visioning. And it's essentially you're taking someone, a new agent or a new hire, and you're understanding what their goals are. And if you add up all of the goals of all of your agents, that should be the goal of the business. Me, as the leader, should not be going in and telling people, this is what our goal is. I should say, Agent A, what do you want to make? Agent B. And then you add that all up and you say, okay, we all want to make $1 million collectively. Okay. And $1 million collectively is 200,000 here, 75,000 there, 150,000 there. And then you do ratios and then you say, okay, if you want to make $200,000, how many listings do you have to take? How many appointments do you need to go on? How many contacts do you need to make? And how many calls do you need to make? And then you have ratios for each. And then you have to add that up and we'll have a big board and everything like that. The reason I bring that up, which is a great concept, by the way, what I just talked about for leadership, is that you don't say we're going to make $1 million because people are like, how do I fit into that? Where does my $200,000 fit into that? So what he's saying is obviously take everyone collectively, which is a great idea. And then you can individually hold them accountable to their dials and their contacts, their appointments, their listings and things like that. But Ben Kinney is a hustler. The guy is straight off the boat, unbelievable hustler. And he's not straight off the boat, but he's just he's got that mindset. So he brought up that he has God knows how many people underneath him, at his company. And he brought someone in and the person walked in nervously and they said, what did I do wrong? And he was saying on the podcast that for that person to walk into the into the meeting that works for him, and the first thing that person says is, "What did I do wrong?" He goes, I just failed as a leader. I just failed as a leader. If that's the first thing, that means I'm not spending enough time with them. That means that I'm not creating a culture of safety. That means that person is worried about their job, because they're not walking in and be like, "Hey, how's it going, Ben? How you doing?" They're walking in like, "What did I do wrong?" If all of your employees or your culture is walking around, "What did I do wrong?" That's not good. The reason I bring that up is the reason of learning. Okay. As Chris said, I did a video a while back about your potential is literally unknowable. And I didn't remember that. So the reason I bring that up is because on my run, a week ago, I was listening to the Jordan Peterson lecture about that. So it re-triggered in my mind. That's why you can't stop learning, because things that you had in your mind got pushed back to have other things in your mind, like self-deception in leadership or doing videos or whatever the case is. That's why you cannot stop learning. I highly recommend, and I'll leave you with this, I highly recommend that you guys look back at all the content that you're consuming. Okay? The books, I really did even Instagram. I look back and I'm like, I don't need to follow The Rock. I don't need to follow any Barstool accounts. I really don't need to follow, any of these drama pages. And I really look back and I just started unfollowing that. And I would rather just stick to the people I know and I like. Yes, there's some people within the industry like a Ryan Serhant or Frederick Eklund or something like that, because sometimes they do things that are in the industry that are very innovative. And also I just want to know, wow, that's awesome. Some people look at that and they look at it jealousy. So you have to look at essentially all of everything. Long-time listeners, since you're Gallon Woodard, and I've been fascinated with self-development ideas far better than I do. But my question is, the question didn't come up. So sorry, Adam. Maybe if you could just post just the question. I'm getting half of the question. And the reason I bring up the content is, what are you watching? What are you watching? I was watching drama in 2016. I really got into the election. And then when Donald was elected, it was so polarizing that I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Even for him or against him, whatever, it doesn't matter. What am I going to do? Say Hillary won. What am I going to do? Say, I've never donated to anyone. I don't care. I'm never going to attend a rally. I'm never going to attend a protest. I just really looked at it. And then even sports. I know Chris obviously is in there. Some people game a lot. That's my outlet. That's my everything else. That's where I'm saying, there's a great book that someone actually recommended, that it came up, and it said how to stop drinking and how to stop. Order the book, Alan Carr's Quit Drinking Without Willpower. Quit Drinking Without Willpower. And I'm going to order that. And the reason being is that the person that was on Joe Rogan's podcast, which I don't listen to Joe Rogan, but it popped up on my YouTube. It was some comedian girl, and she said, I just want you to read the book, because I think she smoked and she drank, and she hasn't done either in 7 or 8 years since reading the book. And she said that the book lays out a logical way, all of your excuses. I do it to take off the social edge. I do it to, relieve time. I do it for this. And then he breaks it down. I haven't read it. I can't talk about it, but it's true. I want to do that with the content you consume. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I've unfriended more people this year because they're like, unfriend me if you don't like me talking about politics. Okay, cool. Thanks. Not like I'm on Facebook that often. The suspense is killing us, Adam. I'll get back to you next time you go live. 200 crowds. Do you think people bow out of out of politics in this age because they feel like they can't affect any change. No, I think more people are involved in politics than ever before. Like when I was growing up, nobody really talked about it. But everyone has access to it. That's why. And the reason that we love politics is because you essentially have an unlimited one of two things. You have an unlimited voice to get your voice out there. So Bob from Omaha and Tim from New York City and Steven from St. Louis all can take a video and post something that ruins someone's life or makes a big story in the United States. And they could also post on Twitter some things. That's number one. So their voice is heard. Number two is that they can consume an unlimited stream 24/7 at any time. Before is you would have to sit down in front of a TV. Before that it was you'd have to go buy a newspaper. And by the way, most people were illiterate like 125, 150 years ago. So that's crazy. So my feeling on politics is, and this isn't for everyone, and by the way, this is politics or news, any kind of news. Because they're talking about, why are there no good men out there? Or why are women, this? That's relationships. That's news. Okay? I look at it as, that's great, but that's not my reality. So that's good, but I don't want to look at it from the perspective of this person who's looking to put out something so you click on it and then that person gets paid based on the amount of views to that page, which is how most of these websites pay their contributors. If it's not for free, it's paid per view. So they need to make it shocking. Okay? It's all about the title. It's all about the sharing. Okay? It's frightening on the mental health, and no one's talking about it. They're blaming other things when in fact it's the mental health. And the mental health comes down to two things, is that they feel that they have no way to change. They do not feel that they can actually change. So they look to government, the community, the internet, society, drugs, porn, food, alcohol for an escape. That's not the escape. As David Goggins talks about, and as he just talked about on one of his clips, I forgot where I was even watching it, is that he goes, it was actually one of his latest clips. He was actually in New York City. He did some conference, I don't know, here in whenever. And essentially he talked about, he goes, the reason that I don't drink, smoke, or do any drugs, or ever have, I think he said he's tried alcohol, but not on a regular basis, is he goes, I want to feel every feeling. And in the book, he talks about after the Hurt 100, which is 100 miles in 24 hours on a 1 mile loop track, which is mental to think about in of itself. You have to do 100 1 mile laps, and he did 101. Is that when he was shitting on himself and pissing down his leg and he was in the bathtub, he didn't want to be taken to the hospital because he wanted to feel that pain. He wanted to feel that accomplishment. And if people really looked at that as the ultimate outcome, is the feeling you get of accomplishment, the feeling of going to the gym when no one else is going to the gym, the feeling you're on the road and no one is on the road. I can't even put it into words. And I'll leave you with this. I know I said that. Sales calls, I know you're big into. Have you done them today? How'd they go? Rate of success. Yeah, it's 50-1. That's really what it comes down to. It's not domain. Oh wow. Okay. Thanks YouTube. It's telling me that there's a buffer thing. But I woke up at 3:45 to get on the road at 4:15 to get in my bike ride for an hour and then my run for an hour because I had to get on a train to go up to my grandma's house to meet my family in August. To be on the road at 4:15 when people are coming home and they're shit-faced all over the streets. This is in August. So New York City, obviously, our bars close at 4 p.m. and I live in a very lively area, the West Village. People are all over Christopher Street, the street that I live on, and you're biking out there with a light, both ends, 2 lights, at 4:15 to get done to then run run an hour after your 1 hour bike ride. I can't even tell you that feeling. I can't even tell you that feeling. That actually first came from Ed Millett when he was with Grant Cardone. He said, I wake up and I'm the first one at work and the last one to leave. I don't recommend that. But he says, I would rather you be extremely productive than the duration you're at work. So it's really the intensity of when you're at work. But he said the reason that he actually did that was not for anyone else. It's because he wanted to show himself that he deserved the business he was going to be going after, the money he was going to be obtaining that day, the relationships he was going to be building, the closing process of getting a partnership. And I thought about that because I come in, office is always empty, 8 o'clock usually is when I make it into work because I'm up at 4:45, 5 o'clock. I exercise for 2 hours, whether that's a 1 hour. And by the way, it's not like I sit there and I'm on my phone. I'm exercising for 2 hours. I'm riding a bike, which you can't stop. and then I run, which you're not on your phone, or I swim, which you're not on your phone. Those are those 2 hours. And then I shower, eat, and at work, 8 o'clock. And I could make it earlier, but you know what? That's my schedule. And then at 8:30, I hit the phones. And the reason I hit the phones is because I don't like doing it. But the thing is, I don't also like waking up and doing 2 hours of exercise. But I notice that by 11 a.m., I've done what most people don't want to do. So it's kind of an entitlement in a good way. It's not an entitlement because I haven't done anything. It's an entitlement in a good way where it says, listen, I've actually woken up, exercised for 2 hours, made 2 hours of phone calls. It's 11 a.m. Most people are only about an hour and a half, hour into their workday. So the reason I'm going to be doing these lives is to kind of get out a lot of thoughts that I think throughout the day. So before I might have shorter videos or whatnot, but also I want to focus on the podcast, even though I don't want to pay the SoundCloud 2 accounts, $400 a year to get SoundCloud Pro, but I'll probably end up doing that. But anyway, if you guys have any questions, leave in the comments below. I would say one of the biggest things for making the sales calls is that in a sales call, you really get to know how good you are. And if you're good, you get the appointment. And when you're on the appointment, you get the listing. And there is nothing better than that. Because if someone refers me business, it feels really good because I thank them and everything else. But if you work to get your client, nothing better than that. It's kind of being handed $1,000 or earning $1,000. Which one's going to feel better? They're both going to feel good. Here's $1,000. Is your feeling. But if you earn $1,000, you're like, yeah, it's a different feeling. It's an extended amount of feeling. And I know I said this before. This is the last thing. If you work out for 2 hours, you can they say it's a 6 hour gap. I think it's 1 hour for every 1 hour, or 1 hour of exercise is 6 hours, but it's obviously in diminishing return. So when you stop exercising, it's a diminishing return, but they say it's a 6 hour feeling whatever, it feels good for 6 hours, which I can attest to that it does feel good for that amount of time. But I would also put into this is that the longer you do something at a pretty high intensity, the longer it will feel better. So if you do 15 minutes of calls, it will feel good for maybe an hour. You do 2 hours of calls, it will feel good for 4 or 5 hours. And that's where my energy goes into the afternoon, is that before I had no energy at 3. I had no willpower at 3 p.m. That was my problem. I had no willpower at 3 p.m. I would literally 2 years ago, I would go down and get food. I'd eat shitty food, or I'd go get a coffee. And it's because I was bored. It's not because I didn't have the lack of energy. I was bored. So that's an issue. People go onto Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all those things because they're bored. Don't be bored, or put up a barrier so you don't even go on it. Facebook Eradicator has a desktop app that it eradicates the Facebook feed. So I go onto Facebook and there's no feed. You could put up something that essentially blocks all the websites. Forgot the name of it. Do I have it up? I don't have it up. All right. Well, anyway, why don't you do an afternoon meditation to reset? I've actually thought about maybe not meditation, but journaling really helps me. I've noticed that meditation is really not my thing. It is really not my thing. What is my thing is getting thoughts out of my mind onto paper, and it pieces it together. Maybe at one time it will be meditation, but I've tried meditation. I would rather just get the thoughts out of my brain. But anyway, if you guys have any questions, leave in the comments below if you like this or not. But I'll be back later next week.